Well, good morning. It's good to see you all. What was that, Steve? Oh, good. Okay. Just want to make sure it's a good morning for everybody. So, Carrie, thank you. Wonderful job. But she's not here every week, so we don't get a chance to thank her all the time. So thank you very much. You did a great job. She did steal my first question. So it's sad she won't be able to come back. It's a natural question to ask. I do actually want to know, though, today is about questions. I don't know if you saw the title, but today's sermon title is Without Question. And so I've got a few for us. And I did want, how many of you watched some of the game yesterday? Some of the game. Okay. How many of you watched all of it? Saw every inning? You guys saw 18 innings of baseball. So, who went? I know a few people went. So, are you glad you went? Yes. Are you? Okay, good. Would you be gladder had we won? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Was there a time around the 15th where it was just like, I don't care who wins, I just want to get out of here?
Levi had that moment.
Okay. Well, I had that moment. I finally got to a place where, I was wanting at least 2 games here in Seattle, and we got them. We just got them all at one time, just straight through. And so that was fun and not fun. I was trying I usually put my sermon slides together on Saturday, and I thought, well, I can do that during a game, and I can polish some stuff up. So I got a lot of slides today. That isn't quite true. But I do have one other question. Who counted the chili ballots? Anybody willing to fess up on that? Lisa Palace, yeah. All right. I saw some Stop the Steal posters. I'm gonna get that fired up. No, that was very fun. And it was Terry's idea to do. Thanks for that. It was very, very fun to do that and get a free chili out of it too. So I am going to ask us some questions, and so. I don't normally do this. Jerry, once in a while, he'll do questions, share with your neighbor and that sort of stuff. And I don't normally, but today, in context of what we're trying to get to, so if you're near somebody, or if you're not, then so maybe Steve's could pair up here for a second. And if you're looking around, it's like, oh, they don't have anybody to talk with, then you can share this answer with 3 people. Make sure that everybody has somebody. And so I'll pause for a second. And so here's the first question I have for you is, what's your favorite holiday? Just somebody near you, and not a 50-word answer. This is a 1-word answer. Favorite holiday?
What's your favorite?
Kevin, what do you got?
Christmas.
Christmas, yeah. Mine too. Yeah, it's kind of Christmas, Easter. If I go with the spiritual side, I got to say Easter, but fun, Christmas. Yeah. So, okay. So, obviously, different people are different. If I asked my brother this, he'd say Halloween. He doesn't attend church, so he wouldn't have to give that answer here. And if that's your answer, that's fine. If it's Cinco de Mayo, we probably should talk. But usually the big ones, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter. But you can learn some about somebody just by asking what their favorite holiday is. So here's the next question. Just again, share with the same people. If you had to move to another state, Washington was kicking you out, what would be the state? Which state? Wyoming. Later I'm going to ask why. So I would either, my practical answer would be Oregon, because it's as close as I can get. But for fun, I'd go to Hawaii. So, yeah. And if you're there at home, ask somebody. Okay. My answer was Oregon, just because it's close, or Hawaii if I was going to retire. But I don't have any plans to retire, so Oregon would probably be my first choice. So this one's a little harder. But don't answer yet, because you're going to go with something cheesy. What characteristic do you like in people? And you're going to turn and you're going to go, oh, honesty or some nonsense. You learn that later in a relationship. You're not attracted to somebody by their honesty. So and I don't mean attraction, just in terms of, I enjoy being with this type of person. I enjoy that. So a characteristic that you like in people. It makes you want to hang out with them. Honesty would later make you change your mind, right, if they're not honest. So A characteristic that you like in people.
Sense of humor.
Okay.
I like this. It's fun.
Fun. Okay. They just like to do fun things, similar to your type of fun. Yeah. Yeah. So somebody's fun sense is different, maybe not, but yeah. Okay. So. Yeah. No. Well, see, then we'd have to talk somewhere and go, "What do you think's fun?" And then it's like, okay, yeah. Because if somebody thinks that playing tag on the freeway is fun, you wouldn't do that. Right? So. Okay. So the characteristic you like in people, mine is that they like me. That's really the dividing line for me. If I know they don't, whatever, you know. But if they like me, and the second characteristic I would say is that we have many things in common. We like to play games, like sports, you know. We like to get, you know. So there's a lot of things that make us connect with people, and there are some that make us not. But just in terms of human nature, we like people that like us, which is natural. Most of us don't like people that don't like us. That's why Jesus had to give us instructions about that. Not many instructions about those people you like, right? About the ones you don't. The biggest problem in the world, what do you think? Don't go into a dissertation. What do you think the biggest, and don't say sin. Don't say sin. Biggest problem in the world. What do you think?
Problem with self and self-importance.
Oh, okay. So they're sort of inward looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, selfishness. Yeah. Stole my answer, actually. So.
By our own screwy
Well, Kevin and I agreed on this one, which is why I like Kevin. We both said selfishness is the biggest problem in the world, and in a way that's cheating, because it's selfishness that causes so many other problems. If you look from a macro scale, you might say overpopulation or something like that. But I'm talking when we're talking about why people cause problems, and for me, I think it is selfishness. But it's interesting to think about what is causing the problems. If you pull just the generic sin out, you know, obviously it's sin, but what is it that's going sideways in the world? So anyhow, those are a few questions. We're going to come back to questions a little bit later, at least that you'll be involved in. In the Bible, Jesus was asked questions, right? In the Bible, he's asked 183 questions. People come up to him, ask him questions, 183 different questions that he's asked. Now, some of those overlap between Gospels, same question, but when you just go through, he is addressed with 183 questions. He answers 3 of them. He's not known for his good answers. He is known for steering people where they should be. He's known for guiding the conversation. He never let others drive the conversation, and that's why he didn't answer very many questions. Now, interestingly to me, he asked 307 questions. Now, I pulled this stat off the internet, and I have not verified it. So those of you who are bean counters, I don't want a text that said he asked only 304, Dave. That's like, so I didn't validate this. What I did do is go through and look at a lot of the questions that he asked in Scripture, and some of them are not seeking response. They're rhetorical questions of some sort, but he does ask a lot of questions. He asks things of people because he's wanting to engage with them in a way that's not simply talking at them. So, here's one of the questions he asked. Do you believe that I'm able to do this? 2 blind guys come up to him and are wanting to be healed. And he asks them, do you believe that I'm able to do this? Which is an interesting question. They came up to him and said, we'd like to be healed of our blindness. And he then says, do you believe I'm able to do this? To me, I would think, well, they're here because, well, actually, maybe not. Maybe they're there because they're hoping he can do this. I have hopes often that I don't believe. Yeah, about 15 innings yesterday, I had hopes that I didn't have any belief because that's the way I am. So Jesus is trying to get these two guys, and maybe the listeners too, to actually stop and think, what am I really thinking here? What's inside of me as I do this? Is it simply a desperation ploy, or do I believe in this guy? Do I think this Jesus can do what he's purported to be able to do? And so he asks them that. Another question he asks, what did you go out into the desert to see? What did you go out into the desert to see? He asks this question. John the Baptist is in prison. His life isn't ending the way he or his disciples expected. John calls some of his disciples to him that are visiting him at prison and says, look, go talk to Jesus and say, are you the one who was to come? And so they do. They go and ask him that. And Jesus says, look what's going on. And this question is after those disciples turn, the disciples of John the Baptist turn and are walking away, Jesus turns to those watching them walk away and said, what did you go out to the desert to see? What he's trying to do here is get, these people are starting to be critical of who John the Baptist was. And so Jesus gets after them. He gets after them because it's very easy for folks to have shifted loyalty to Jesus and then see John the Baptist all of a sudden become a doubter, and then his disciples walking away probably somewhat disconnected because they were looking for a different answer, and then they start to criticize him a little bit, and then Jesus says, who were you going out to see? You guys redirected your lives because of this guy. Don't diminish him. And he actually builds John the Baptist up. He knows John's going to die. But he builds John the Baptist up, and he's trying to get people to go, don't just look at the outside of what's happening. Look at what the reality is. John the Baptist is the greatest of those born amongst women. Wow, what a crazy thing to say. And then for the people to realize, yeah, we were starting to get a little sideways about John. We were starting to wonder, is he this Baptist that we thought he was? And it turns out Jesus said, absolutely. He said, who do you say that I am? And you guys know this, right? You remember this statement. Peter's trying to work it out. And Jesus had asked, who do people say I am? And he gives these answers to them. Jesus, maybe you're a prophet, or they think maybe you're Elijah, maybe a lot of answers on who you might say Jesus is. And then Jesus says, I don't really care about that. We're just sort of warming up with that question. Who do you say that I am? And he's wanting for Peter to have to go, those guys are wrong. Who you actually are is somebody different, even though they've elevated you up to some pretty high level places. Elijah, wow. But that's not adequate. And Jesus is asking a question. Jesus could have just said, look, yeah, that's what they think, but that's not who I am. Let me tell you who I am. Jesus knows that they need to go through a process. Peter needs to go through a process to ask inside, what do I believe? The only way that the Holy Spirit's going to reveal to Peter who Jesus is if Peter hits pause long enough and asks an honest question inside and goes, I need to know the answer to this. Without good questions, we don't get good answers because there's no space for them. And I think that's true in our lives often, that we don't ask questions. He asks this, salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? Anybody know the answer to that? I don't know how you make salt not salty. Right? So that was one of my responses if Jesus said that to me. How does that happen? But Jesus knows he wants you to think about that. From a scientific point of view, I don't know. I'm not a chemist. Sodium and chlorine, you mix, is that right? Isn't it sodium and chlorine? You mix them together and you get salt? That's a loose process, but it happens somehow. So if I cut a salt in half, can you do that? No. If I melt it down into water, can I do that? How do you get salt to become unsalty? I don't know the answer to that, but that's not the question. The question is, if it ever did, how does it get its salt back? You ever just sat around and thought, why did Jesus ask that question? And can it even be done? What outcome is he looking for? So I want to ask you to pause for a second, not to share with anybody around you, but what was Jesus trying to accomplish? Why did he ask questions? So many questions. Why? What was his objective? Was it because he didn't know answers? That's not it. What do you think? If you're just sitting there, what is Jesus trying to accomplish? And Jesus knew at some level, somewhere along the line, you'd be reading these questions. They were directed to other people, but you'd be reading them. Why is he asking you these questions?
He wants us to examine ourselves.
He wants us to examine ourselves. If I could call you up to read my notes, I would say, hey, I'm kicking you out. You've been stealing my notes.
And Paul writes of this in 2 Corinthians.
He does, yeah. He wants us to examine ourselves. He wants us to ask ourselves these questions. Socrates said this, the unexamined life is not worth living.
Yeah, I did have access to your notes.
If you had pulled that one up, I would have been, okay, Judy's been slipping the slides out to people. Now, I'm not a Socrates promoter, so don't worry. I'm not trying to new age us, although that would be old age, I guess. But he shows up from time to time as a popular person. But he was right about a few things. This is one, maybe. Is it not worth living? I don't know. Is it able to be lived well? The unexamined life, the life that doesn't ever stop and ask questions. Can you get anywhere? Can you grow if you don't ask yourself questions? The answer to why Jesus asked questions is the same reason why he told parables. Jesus very rarely did direct teaching. He did do some, but he did a lot of teaching that you have to make a choice to sit and stew in. It'd be several days where I'm trying to figure out how did Depression era stew or chili win? Hasn't it come some distance since the Depression? No, I'm not going to think about that because that one doesn't matter. But what I do want to think about, what was Jesus trying to get me to do 2,000 years ago when he asked the question, who do you say that I am? What was Jesus trying to get me to think when I run across the question, if salt loses its saltiness, what is he trying to get inside of me to happen? We won't answer that right now. But it's very easy to read the Bible or to just go through life and never ask yourself questions. Am I doing this right? Am I, when I get finished with my days, going to think, that's exactly how I was hoping it would go? Based on my decisions. I don't get to decide lots of things, right? What day I die and how I die, I don't get to make those decisions. So whether I'll be happy about that process, I don't know. If I get hit by a train when I'm 81, I'll be happy with that process. It'll be enough years in my mind. It won't hurt very long. It'll be quick. Cleanup will be fast. I'll be good with that. But I don't get to make those decisions. But what I do get to do is for those 81 years, did I interact with people the way I wished I would have? Did I prioritize my time the way I wished I would have? Did I use my resources the way I wished I would have? And those are not the questions that I'm even putting this up here for. Here's why I'm putting this up here. My favorite verse, you have heard me talk about this many times. My favorite verse is in John. Jesus saw them following and he asked, and I won't quiz you, I'm just going to put it up here. He asked, what do you want? What do you want? And I've done several sermons off of this because to me it's the most profound thing that he says in many ways because they want to know where he's staying and he just says, come and see. But this sermon isn't about the come and see, it's about the what do you want? And so I used a different text that Terry read from Mark because Jesus asked almost the exact same thing, just a different setting. Jesus asked him, what do you want me to do for you? What is it that you want? See, we think often, I think, that God is constantly trying to get us to do what He wants. I think that's people's gripe about God sometimes, that God's trying to, all right, I got it all laid out for you. I don't want any questions. If you just do what I say, you get here when you're done, I'll be a thumbs up. But I see Jesus actually engaging people in their lives where they're at and saying, what is it that you want? What is it that you want? Now, do we want to get to the place where the answer to that is, I actually do want to know what you want me to do, Lord. But in the midst of that whole process, we have our humanness. We have our self that's different from every other self in here. That's why I started with the questions. We're not going to line up on everything, right? Your favorite holiday might be different than mine, and your characteristic you like of somebody else might be different, and your interest in sports or different things. We're all different before the Lord. He's not trying to get us to all be the same. He's not trying to get us to all want the same thing. He's built us differently. It would be way easier to get friends if we were all the same. Just hang out with, go up to Denny's, sit down by somebody and go, hey, I know what you think because you're the same as me. That's no fun. It's not interesting. It's not who God is, because God's immensely creative and diverse. And He wants us to continue as ourselves. So when He asks this, what do you want? I'm asking this today in terms of church. I'm asking you to consider that Jesus is saying this to you, not that Pastor Dave is. What is it that you want from church? So I'm going to give you a few questions, and I'm talking not in general, I'm talking to you. What do you want from church? See, I think that we get so used to things that we don't actually know what we're expecting or needing, and we just coast through. I know this is true with me. I can't project that I'm the same as everyone, but my interaction with people about church happens pretty often. And what I find is that by the time people realize they're disillusioned with church, they're way past being able to get back. And I believe the answer is rooted in, I didn't know what I wanted as I went. So I'm going to ask you 4 questions that I don't want you to answer now. And in 10 minutes, an email, if you're on our email list, is going to show up in your email account that has these 4 questions, because I don't want you to answer them right now. I want you to listen right now, and I want you to answer these questions later. I'll explain a little bit more of that in a minute. The first question is this: what do you believe church is or should be? What do you believe church is or should be? So I want you to describe what church is and does on Sundays, during the week, in the community, whatever you think. But I don't want you to just go, oh, top of my brain, I'm done. I want you to consider what you have in here, not what's just floating at the top of your head. I don't want you to think, oh, I want church to be a gas station. When I'm out of gas, I go get gas. If you ultimately land there, fine, that's good to know. But I don't want you to be that simple this time. What do you believe church is, or that it should be, in the context of here on Sundays, during the week, and in the community? The second question is this: what do you want from your church? This has to do with just our church. What is it that you want from this church? Because if you don't know, A, you won't know if you're getting it, and more problematic, you won't know if you're not. If you don't know what you're looking for, you're not going to find it. What is it that you want from your church? The third question is this: what do you want from the pastor or pastors of the church? What is it that you want from the pastors? Now, I'm going to tell you one secret. The word elder in the New Testament is the same Greek word as the word pastor. So when I'm asking this question, I'm not trying to narrow us down. We have 5 pastors, but we also have a team of elders, and Everybody that's in that group of leadership and been appointed by God. Job is, by God, not by paycheck, to shepherd the church. So I'm asking you, what is it that you want from those people? What do you want from the pastors, elders of the church? And last, why do you go to church? Why is it that you come? When you come. Now, and I'm going to be honest, because that's what people like. There are a few of you that are actually here in the building today that I was asking God as we worked together on this sermon, I hope, that a few of you here that I had said, Lord, please have them be in church. And He brought you. I won't point out who. But there are some that, because I believe that God very specifically chooses the church that you're in for you. We think we choose our own, and we may overrule. But once God's put you in a church, I think He's put you there on purpose for what He has for you. So you might say, well, why was I specifically praying for some people and not for others? I wasn't praying that others would not show, but some of us need to evaluate what we think the answers to these questions should be and are. This was not my plan for a sermon. About 3 weeks ago, I was working on a totally different direction and felt as clearly as on most of my sermon, most times when I can say, this is where God wanted me to go, because this, like I said, this isn't where I was going. And I feel like God said that I need my church to answer a few questions. But what is it that they think church is? What is it that they think they need and want from church? Because if we don't answer those questions, we won't get to where we need to get to. And I don't want to leave anybody behind that doesn't want to be left behind. Very often people get left behind because they haven't answered these questions in the first place. So you're going to get an email now in 5 minutes. That's the wonders of my wife and technology. It has nothing to do with me. I'm not ending and going to go type it out and send it. It's already queued up. But it'll show up in your email, and this is what it's going to ask you to do, is to take some time and answer these questions. If you are not on our email system, you might want to take a picture of this screen or let one of us know. Yes?
Yeah, if they can just let me know, I'll have a sign-up sheet here in the back.
Okay.
If they can put their email and we'll add you to the distribution.
Okay, yeah. And this is not a ploy to get you on the email system. If you just want to take a photo, that's one of the rare times where I'll say, get your phone out, keep it focused to the side. I don't want any pictures of me right now. But it's going to ask you to send it back to me. My personal email is in there. Please don't hit reply all. I don't know if we could shut that off even. But please, for the love of the rest of us, don't hit reply all. And if you're not comfortable giving it to me, don't not do it. Just don't give it to me. I'm not going to call anyone up, hey, it's not in yet. A couple of you I might, actually. But for the most of us, no. I would love to have this information as a pastor in this church. It's not going to be distributed. The aggregate, everything together, I might communicate to the elders and leadership. Just in, this is sort of the. But I'm not. This has not been done as a survey. If this was just a survey, we'd hand it out after church. I believe God's asking us to answer these questions. I'd like to see the information because it would be helpful for me in my relationship pastorally and personally with you. And like I said, if you're not comfortable with sending that to me, just don't. Still answer the questions. The amount of time you put into it, I think, will be the amount of time that is helpful for you in the future. So I'm going to take us back to two of the questions. These were not random questions that Jesus asked. What did you go out in the desert to see? That question was asked because the people were getting confused by the information they were misinterpreting. The people were beginning to struggle with stuff that Jesus was saying, you are not reading this right. This is part of the work of God, not the work of a broken prophet, John the Baptist. It's hard to get your mind around, but God intentionally allowed John the Baptist's life to be taken. Remember what John said? I have to decrease. He just didn't know how much. And it was hard for him to grapple with. And other people began to misunderstand. We don't want to misunderstand. And the second one, salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? The answer to if a church loses its churchiness, how can it become church again? Is you got to first figure out what is church. What's it supposed to be? Once you know that, then you can begin to get back to what it is supposed to be. So my last little note here is, I'm not doing this intentionally. This isn't a, well, Dave's worried about the condition of the church. I'm not. I think why God put this on my heart is our next step for growth. Not growth in numbers, but growth in depth. Is us understanding what are we doing here so we can go that direction. Now again, if you're not comfortable with me having what you write, please still do this. I'd love to have it, but not to evaluate you in any way. I won't send back a corrected copy. Just want the information. But more than that, I want you to have walked through this between you and the Lord. So I'm going to close in prayer. We'll be done. And then in 1 minute after that, hopefully your phone goes ding or doesn't. So that's right. I forgot about that. Well, Lord, thanks for today. Thanks for this church family that, Lord, I am so grateful for the love and integrity and the earnestness with which our folks come together. Lord, I know their love for you. I know their desire to serve you. And Lord, I just think you're asking us to take a focus minute. Make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be, the way that we're supposed to be, with the outcome being a deeper and more meaningful experience as a body and relationship with you. Lord, help us to be honest and thoughtful and pray that we interact with your Spirit and you lead us to our answers that are a team answer between our hearts and you. Pray for your blessing on this whole church body and each person that's here. Ask for encouragement. Ask for a deeper faith. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you guys. We'll see you next week.